morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in a very special day today, Navratri, yes, and of course tomorrow will be the Dashmi, today is the Navami. We will talk a little bit more about that and find out what else is happening in that. But once again, welcome to the 14th day of October. Yes, today it's raining here in Brisbane, so enjoying a rainy day. So if we were saving up for a rainy day, now's the time to dip into your savings because the rainy day is here. Well, moving on, the temperature is 18 degrees, inside a little bit humid because that's what happens with the rain, but we know that the humidity will just go up the roof after the rain clears and the sun comes back on. Well, right now let's get on with the news today. Well, the big news that's been making the rounds is about the Queensland residents will be able to get some assistance if they are planning on travelling. And talking about travelling, don't forget at 10 a.m. we'll have Tanvi Goyal talking all about the travel as we move in towards our holidays to find out what we can do. But here's what Queenslanders can expect.
Doctors and nurses say hospital funding needs life support.
We are hundreds of beds short. No matter how you count it, we are hundreds of beds short. We are tens of ICU beds short. No matter how you count it, no matter how you dice it, we are underfunded.
That's without rampant COVID infections. A survey of nurses and midwives found there's anxiety about an outbreak.
Over 70% stated that they were extremely concerned that the system would not be able to cope if we had a Delta outbreak in Queensland.
They say more federal funding's needed. The opposition thinks years of Labor leadership is to blame.
Is Labor's failure to address hospital bed shortages after 7 years the reason we don't have a pathway out of the pandemic?
Don't come in here and talk down our health system.
Opposition member for Glasshouse.
Leader of the opposition was part of the cabinet. They decimated health in this state, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of the opposition will cease his interjections.
Mr. Speaker.
All sides agree vaccination is key, but the latest figures show a stark city-country divide. In places like Kenmore, Brookfield and Moggill, more than 90% of eligible people have had a first dose and 74% are fully vaccinated. In far north Queensland, just 46% have had one jab and only 33.8% are inoculated. Indigenous communities have some of the worst rates, with just 19% of Cherbourg and Yarrabah fully vaccinated. So the government's trying all it can to get jabs in arms.
Starting this Saturday, vaccine clinics are coming to Bunnings.
More than 30 hardware stores have signed up.
So families can get their Bunnings sausage and a dose of vaccine.
A jab with a snag. George Roberts, ABC News.
A jab with a snag. That is going to be happening right here in Queensland. Of course, Queensland is celebrating with the little bit of opening, and here's what Tourism Queensland is got on offer. Yes, it's time for a Queensland getaway, as they reckon. This is the time to get away and enjoy what Queensland has to offer, and it has got some great things to offer. But right now, going around the country, next up, we go to ACT.
As we've announced earlier, the 51 cases overnight are an increase in what we have experienced in the last few days, and it serves as an important reminder that new clusters can still emerge, especially in workplace settings amongst unvaccinated or partially vaccinated people. And Dr. Coleman will provide some further information on the new cluster shortly. But it serves as a timely reminder that if you are not yet fully vaccinated, please be very cautious over the coming weeks. Now, as we foreshadowed yesterday, our public health response will evolve over the initial stages of our exit from lockdown. And Dr. Coleman will provide some further details shortly on how test, trace, isolate and quarantine will change. And of course, this will have implications for the focus of work of our very hard-working contact tracing team, and this will start to change from Friday. The goal of the Territory's public health response over the coming weeks and months will be to manage COVID in our community and to support our health system. Another goal will be to achieve a successful economic recovery. And our public health response is absolutely critical to underpinning that economic recovery. High vaccination coverage, compliance with the ongoing restrictions, and a continued strong public health response through effective test, trace, isolate and quarantine measures, although they'll be changing, they still need to be effective, are the three key levers for us to manage the next phase. On vaccination, the ACT is clearly on the path that we need to be on. However, even with our high levels of vaccination, there are still high-risk settings where it's important to ensure that everyone is vaccinated.
Well, of course, that is the message, that everyone needs to be vaccinated, and of course here in Queensland as well, regardless of the shortage of beds, and that's a different debate, both parties agree that the vaccination is the key moving forward. Well, what happens when you put a person in quarantine, and if they don't like it, what do? They do whatever. So has been the case in Tasmania.
G'day everyone. Joined today by Health Secretary, State Health Commander Catherine Morgan-Wicks, Director of Public Health Dr Mark Veitch and Donna Adams, Deputy State Controller. What we'll do is I'll hand to Mark once I've finished, and then to Kath for a vaccine update, and Donna can take any questions that there may be as well. Now, at the moment there are more than 25,000 active cases of COVID between New South Wales and Victoria, and the risk to Tasmania remains ever present. While we have strong border controls and quarantine processes and the vast majority of people follow the rules, there are occasions where this is not the case. Unfortunately, I've been advised that a 31-year-old New South Wales man arriving in Tasmania via Melbourne on Monday evening, despite his good-to-go pass having been refused, was placed in quarantine at the Travelodge Hotel in Hobart that night. Now, following a welfare check undertaken by the hotel security early Tuesday afternoon, the traveller was found not to be in his room. Tasmania Police were immediately notified, and a check of the Travelodge Hobart Hotel was undertaken to try and locate him, and also to confirm that all other current guests were accommodated in accordance with the accommodation register. Late yesterday afternoon at approximately 4:45, the 31-year-old was located by Tasmania Police at an address in the outer northern suburbs of Hobart. He was immediately returned to hotel quarantine, and additional security was allocated to him. The man has been tested overnight and through this morning for COVID-19. It has been confirmed that he has returned a positive result. Now, Dr Veitch will speak more about the circumstances in a moment, but I do want to say it disappoints me greatly that when the vast majority of Tasmanians do the right thing, day in and day out, people will blatantly ignore the rules and put others at risk. And I'd make the point that we've had some 13,400 people now through our hotel quarantine system, and there have been around 3 breaches.
So there have been, lots of breaches. There are 3 breaches there, and of course, being positive and fleeing the hotel quarantine. So that's not a very good news. Victoria has recorded its deadliest day of outbreak. Here's that report.
It is another sad day for Victoria. 30 more people have died with COVID, and it brings the death toll from this outbreak to 114. There have been 1,571 new locally acquired infections. The state now has more than 19,000 active cases. Our reporter Dana Morse joins us now from Melbourne. Good afternoon, Dana. So take us through today's numbers.
Good afternoon, Ros. Well, the numbers today are a slight increase on yesterday, breaking that streak of slowly declining cases. We have 1,571 new infections here in Victoria today. That comes from just under 80,000 tests that were performed in the last reporting period. That's a record in the number of tests ever performed in one day here in Victoria. Of the case numbers, we have a third of those are from the northern suburbs of Melbourne, a quarter are from the west, a quarter are from the southeast, 5% are from the eastern suburbs and 8% are from regional Victoria. We also have 705 people in hospital, 146 are in the ICU and around 94 are on ventilators. And of those people in the ICU, 98% of them are not fully vaccinated. As you mentioned, we do have 13 deaths today. That's a record number of deaths in a single day for this outbreak here in Victoria. Those are people ranging in age from their 50s to their 90s across a number of suburbs, including Hume, Brimbank and Whittlesea, which are all places where the virus has really taken hold. Interestingly, today we are seeing that the southeastern suburbs have caught up to the western suburbs in terms of the growth of the case numbers there. The west seems to be under control while the southeast is still growing a little bit, and health authorities are doing their best there to push out more vaccine and more testing into the southeast to bring that under control. But all in all, a bit of a mixed day here in Victoria.
Dana, there have been some really compelling COVID accounts.
So there you go, a mixed day there in Victoria as Victoria records its highest number in the deadly case. What has Daniel Andre to say about that? But he praises Victorians for what they have been able to do.
Reticence earlier on to give you, my sort of view of what next week looks like. There is some more work to do. We've always been informed by modelling, but this is kind of unique. This is for the first time. We will ease these rules. We will end these lockdowns. We will move to a lockout rather than a lockdown because we've been able to get the vaccination numbers to where we thought they'd be, and in fact to be beyond that. That's the really impressive thing. Now, we've never done that before. Every other lockdown has been about protecting the health system, COVID and non-COVID, while we get people vaccinated. So it's no small thing. It's a massive achievement to be closing in on 70, to be closing in on 90% first dose, which guarantees that, because literally everybody who gets a first dose comes back for a second, will be one of the most vaccinated parts of the world anywhere. Like it's an amazing thing. It's a gradual thing, but there is the issue of giving people notice, and we just got to work through some of these issues. We will, and we'll have clarity for everybody as soon as we can. Today is just a little bit early for us to do that.
So there you go. 90% is a thing that he needs to get to. His assumption is if everyone's got the first dose, they will come back for the second dose as well. Well, right now, Sydney-siders are debating on the voluntary assisted death.
Mark Butler was once fiercely independent, but motor neurone disease is slowly robbing him of the ability to do things for himself.
I can't feed myself, I can't do so many things that people take for granted.
The 64-year-old's greatest fear is that he'll lose the ability to speak. So before that happens, he's using his voice to call for laws to allow terminally ill people in New South Wales to end their own lives with the help of doctors.
Just to give us the option, that's all I'm asking for.
A record 28 MPs from across the political divide are co-sponsoring the voluntary assisted dying bill. Supporters delivered a petition of 100,000 signatures to Parliament, but there are plenty who remain vehemently opposed.
Over time, the boundaries are fudged, people push the envelope, and we will see elderly, vulnerable, sick people who have their lives ended before they've chosen that against their will.
While the majority of Labor...
And I do agree with that last comment as well. I mean, it is... life and death is beyond us human. Our duty is to do the best that we can, the best care that we can, of course, and taking anyone's life, that's a very, very big matter. It is beyond us. It should be beyond the human's decision, is what I'm trying to say. Well, Sydney churches and mosques, some of them are a bit reluctant to reopen as yet.
After months sitting silent, the familiar sound of a call to prayer echoes through the mosque. The faithful feeling blessed to be with their congregation once again.
As soon as you step in, our emotion levels goes high, and then you get a feeling of missing this mass for so long.
Worshippers here in Auburn endured some of the harshest restrictions during lockdown. Now relieved they're no longer constrained by COVID to practice their faith.
We obviously got hit hard here in Western Sydney. Staying at home, praying at home, it just never felt the same.
Fully vaccinated, socially distanced and masked up, this Sikh community is also grateful to be back at their temple.
It's a good relief when we are coming here.
But not all places of worship have opened their doors. Some religious leaders are afraid of the backlash of having to turn away unvaccinated people. So they're waiting until the second stage of the recovery plan when they can reopen to everyone. Catholic and Anglican churches across Sydney remain closed. Most services won't resume until the state reaches 80% full vaccination.
No priest or indeed no member of the congregation would want to have the onerous duty of being a sort of a health police person.
Sydney's largest mosque is also holding back until next week.
We never have this experience before, to make people, when they come to the mosque and find the mosque not open for them and others, they will enter.
So for now, these doors will remain locked for a little longer.
Yes, and a little bit longer. Well, right now, let's get our news from Northern Territory, where the proposed larger cut to mines there is causing a little bit of concern.
In the remote Gulf of Carpentaria, an enormous lead and zinc mine and a heavyweight contributor to the Northern Territory economy. But a string of environmental scandals has raised the alarm for some about the McArthur River mine. Environmentalists were shocked when the Territory government significantly reduced the Glencore-owned mine security bond at the same time as it approved a major expansion late last year. The bonds are meant to stop the taxpayer footing the bill for unseen environmental disasters. The decision to reduce the mine's bond by $120 million is now being challenged in court by traditional owners and the Environment Centre NT.
An inadequate security bond presents a huge risk environmentally, so for the McArthur River in this case and the surrounding country, but it also represents a huge risk for Territory taxpayers.
The ABC can reveal the government's mining department initially calculated an even bigger cut to MRM's security bond, which was then set at $520 million. Documents released under Freedom of Information laws show the department came up with a bond of $355 million. The mine's own calculation was higher at $400 million. Minister Nicole Menison said the higher figure was appropriate and set the bond at $400 million.
One of the problems we have with the way bond systems work is there's really no transparency on the actual calculation. So, one side can produce one number, another side can produce a different number. But we don't know how either have actually arrived at their numbers.
In a statement, the department said the higher figure was independently verified by an outside consultant. But environmental advocates say the issue demonstrates the department is conflicted because it's acting as both the facilitator of the mining industry and its regulator.
The regulator.
So there we go. It's the facilitator and the regulator. So there could be a conflict of interest, but it's all a numbers game in this climate change environment. Mining groups face a real challenge in any which way you look at it. Well, right now let's go into Western Australia, where they're making it mandatory for all speedboats to have life jackets, as per this report.
In 2018, police spent days searching for Tuan Pham and 3 other men in his family who drowned after their boat sank during a fishing trip off Rottnest. Today, his wife, Shirley Sloan, says things might have been different had they been wearing life jackets.
There's 5 little boys out there now growing up without their dads. There's something so easy as just putting on a life jacket.
Life jackets will now become mandatory for anyone who's 400 metres offshore on a vessel shorter than 4.8 metres. For children older than 1 and younger than 12, life jackets will be required 400 metres offshore on a vessel of any size whenever they're on deck. Meanwhile, boat owners have a 5-year transition period to upgrade their emergency position indicating radio beacon, or EPIRB, to a GPS-enabled one.
The GPS-enabled EPIRB actually sends a position to the satellite, which is transferred to the Joint Rescue Coordination Centre in Canberra. That position is then relayed to Water Police, who coordinate that search.
Marine rescue.
So, of course, it is a good move, but we all know that most of the rules, regulations that have come on board, come into being, have been formulated this way, because there happens to be something like this, and then that triggers a situation where then the rules have been formulated to make that. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get to a message from our sponsors before we go into the Daily India Report.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And don't forget that every Wednesday we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra. Right now it's time to take a quick look at Navratri.
Navaratri literally means 9 nights. Every month, after the no moon day or the Amavasya, after that, days are counted. 9th day is called Navami. These 9 days are considered feminine. Dasara is all about, in Karnataka it is about Chamundi, in Bengal it's about Durga, but essentially it's about the feminine goddess, the feminine divinity, because this quarter belongs to her. In this quarter, northern hemisphere of the planet becomes gentle because it receives the least amount of sunlight from now onwards. So everything becomes subdued and feminine. It's not on in a big way like that. See, the worship of the feminine was prevalent right across the planet at one time. But unfortunately, certain very ambitious approach to even religion, like with everything else, conquest became the mode. When conquest became the mode, they burned the feminine out of the planet. We made it like masculine is the only way to be successful, and we have compelled even women to become very masculine today in their attitude and approach and emotion and thought, because somewhere we have made everybody understand masculine is the only way to success, conquest is the way. Conquest is not the way, to embrace is the way. You're trying to conquer the planet, that's what has led to all the disaster. If feminine was more dominant factor, or at least evenly balanced, I don't think you would have any ecological disaster, because…
There we go, from Guruji's voice himself, and that's an excellent explanation of the situation that we are in and what's facing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our Daily India Report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, the International Monetary Fund says that India's economy is expected to grow by 9.5% in 2021 and 8.5% in 2022. This will make India the fastest growing economy as the world emerges from COVID-19. According to latest projections released by the International Monetary Fund, India's economy, which contracted by 7.3% due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is expected to grow by 9.5% in 2021 and 8.5% in 2022. India's growth projection released by the latest World Economic Outlook remains unchanged from its previous WEO World Economic Outlook update of July this summer, but is a 3 percentage point in 2021 and 1.6 percentage point drop from its April projections. This report is released ahead of the annual meeting of the IMF and the World Bank. The world is expected to grow at 5.9% in 2021 and 4.9% in 2022. The United States is projected to grow at 6% this year and 5.2% the next year. China, on the other hand, the IMF said is projected to grow at 8% in 2021 and 5.6% in 2022. Geeta Gopinath, chief economist of the IMF, said that compared to their July forecast, the global growth projection for 2021 has been revised down marginally to 5.9% and is unchanged for 2022 at 4.9%. However, this modest headline revision masks large downgrades for some countries. India raises the issue of growing terrorism in Africa at UN debate on peace building. India has raised its concerns over the rising threat of terrorism in Africa, while also noting that nations that witnessing conflicts or emerging from them were facing multiple challenges in their path towards sustaining peace. Addressing the UN Security Council high-level open debate on peace building and sustaining peace, diversity, state building and the search for peace, Indian Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan also spoke about the change in leadership in Afghanistan that he said happened neither through negotiations nor was it inclusive. The Indian minister called for a broad-based and inclusive process that involved representation of all sections of its citizens. Speaking about terrorism in Africa, the minister said extremist forces and groups were receiving encouragement from member states which seek to divide communities by legitimizing terrorist activities. He said the UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy had clearly reinforced yet again that terrorism cannot be justified under any ground and that no country should provide an excuse for such activities. An Indian expert panel has recommended the indigenously manufactured Covaxin for children 2 to 18 years. It is the same vaccine as given to adults. An expert panel in India has recommended Covaxin, Bharat Biotech's COVID-19 vaccine, to be administered to children between the ages of 2 and 18. Bharat Biotech had submitted data from clinical trials in the 2 to 18 age groups for Covaxin to Central Drug Standard Control Organization. The data has been thoroughly reviewed by the subject expert committee and provided positive recommendations. This represents one of the first approvals worldwide for COVID-19 vaccines for the 2 to 18 age group. Final approval, viewed as a formality, will be given by the Drug Controller General of India. If that happens, Covaxin will be only the second vaccine cleared for use on kids in India. In August, Zydus Cadilla's 3-dose DNA jab was allowed to be used on adults and children over 12. A third potential vaccine for kids is Serum Institute's Novavax, for which the DCGI last month cleared trials for children between 7 and 11 years. A fourth is Biological E's Corbevax, which has been cleared to conduct advanced trials on children above 5. The Covaxin vaccine tested on children is the same formulation as used on adults, but separate trials were needed to guarantee safety and efficacy on younger recipients. Data on these trials has not been made public yet, but tests were conducted on 1,000 plus children across the country. The panel, however, noted the trial on kids showed similar efficacy rates as that on adults. Data on the vaccine's efficacy was submitted to the DCGI in June. The data indicated Covaxin is 77.8% effective in protecting against the virus. India is slowly turning its focus towards vaccinating children against the coronavirus, having administered nearly 960 million doses to adults. At the G20 Extraordinary Summit on Afghanistan, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the world must ensure Afghan territory does not become source of radicalization and terrorism. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has underlined the need to ensure that Afghan territory does not become a source of radicalization and terrorism regionally or globally. Addressing the virtual G20 Extraordinary Summit on Afghanistan as a special guest, Modi underlined the need to enhance the joint fight against the nexus of radicalization, terrorism and the smuggling of drugs and arms in the region. India hopes for an inclusive administration in Afghanistan, which includes women and minorities, in order to preserve the socio-economic gains of the last 20 years and to restrict the spread of radical ideology. He convened support for the important role of the United Nations in Afghanistan and called for renewed support of the G20 for the message contained in UN Security Council Resolution 2593 on Afghanistan, which was passed on August 30 under India's presidency. Modi also noted that the Afghan people have a great feeling of friendship for India. He conveyed that every Indian feels the pain of the Afghan people facing hunger and malnutrition and emphasized on the need for the international community to ensure that Afghanistan has immediate and unhindered access to humanitarian assistance. The meeting was convened by Italy, which currently holds the G20 presidency, and chaired by Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. India's national carrier Air India, with its domestic airline Indian Airlines, all its routes globally, has now returned to be run by the famous Tata's group. Expect the return of the Maharaja in a new avatar. The Indian government has declared Tata Sons subsidiary Thales as the highest bidder for national carrier Air India under the divestment process. Air India of the Maharaja glory returns back to Tata's. Thales quoted an enterprise value of 18,000 crore rupees for 100% equity shareholding of Centre in Air India, along with that of Air India Express and AISATS. Out of 18,000 crore rupees, Thales will retain 15,300 crore rupees, while the rest will be paid to the Centre as the cash component. The bid was higher than the consortium led by industrialist Ajay Singh. The consortium had quoted an EV of 15,100 crore rupees. India had stipulated a reserve price of 12,906 crore rupees. There were only two bidders in the final stage of divestment. Based on the bid results, the Centre will enter into a share purchase agreement with Thales by December end. Indian government hopes the transaction will be completed by December 2021. The jobs of Air India's employees will be safeguarded for 1 year. Currently, Air India has a total strength of 12,085 employees, which includes 8,084 permanent ones. In addition, Air India Express has 1,434 employees. According to Civil Aviation Secretary Rajiv Bansal, no employee will be removed for 1 year. In the second year, if an employee has to be removed, then a VRS option will be provided. Additionally, employees will be provided gratuity and provident fund benefits. The post-retirement medical benefits to employees will be provided. All in all, Tata Sons subsidiary Thales will, among other assets such as human resources, get more 140 aircraft as well as 8 logos. Notably, after the transaction, Tata Sons will have 2 full-service carriers, Vistara and Air India, along with 2 low-cost airlines, Air India Express and Air Asia India, and ground and cargo handling company AISATS. In terms of fleet, Tatas will get Air India's 117 wide-body and narrow-body aircrafts and Air India Express's 24. A significant number of these aircrafts are owned by Air India. It will also get to operate these aircraft on over 4,000 domestic and 1,800 international routes. Bollywood is throwing up another bonanza as it emerges from COVID-19. India's first time loop science fiction movie is in Tamil, titled Django. The trailer has been dropped.
நாம எல்லாரும் இழந்த இடத்தை பிடிச்சிடலாம், இழந்த நேரத்தை யாராலையும் பிடிக்க முடியாது. கடிகாரம் உள்ள பார்க்கும்போது நாம தெரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டிய ஒரு விஷயம்.
Bollywood is emerging strong from COVID-19. Excitement is in the air as the trailer of Tamil film Django, billed as India's first time loop sci-fi movie, has been released. The film is helmed by debutant director Manu Karthikeyan. A time loop film is one where characters experience the same period of time which is repeatedly reset. In such films, when a certain condition is met, such as the death of a character or a clock reaching a certain hour, the loop starts again with one or more characters retaining memories from the previous loop. Several Hollywood movies experimented with the time loop format. Christopher Nolan's Tenet is one well-known recent example. The makers of Django claim that it is a first for Indian cinema. The trailer release marks yet another milestone in the movie's laborious progress to movie screens. The shoot was completed before the second lockdown and the post-production work was done after life returned to normal after the second wave. Mrinalini, Ravi and Satish Kumar essay the lead roles in the action thriller, and Gibran has scored the music for the movie.
அது நடந்த மாதிரி நம்ம மூளை நமக்கு தப்பான தகவலை கொடுத்துருமா.
காலையில நீங்க சர்ஜரி பண்ண பொண்ணு இறந்துருச்சு டாக்டர்.
That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
And thank you very much, Ankita, for that Daily India Report. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we say goodbye for this segment, let's take a look at all the functions and events taking place right here in Brisbane. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. It's been wonderful having your company once again. And don't forget that at 10 a.m. we will have the travel updates with Tanvi Goyal, our 52nd episode, which makes it the anniversary episode. So don't forget, catch up at 10 a.m. for the travel update with Tanvi Goyal of Oz India Travels. Until then, it's goodbye from me.